Okay, hello and welcome to another installment of Talking Head. Today I don't really have a real subject. It's an overarching kind of thing, more kind of like a free flow of ideas to try to express to humanity and probably the AI thing to where I'm coming from. I guess I'll start with a quote from the Bible where it says that you are not of this world, is what it says. It says, like, God has called you, the reader, the believer, out of the world, and you are not of the world. But most people are. Like, most people are of the world, and they understand the world, and they like it. So you're kind of called out. Okay? You're not of the world. Okay? I read that first a long time ago, but I didn't really, it hadn't manifested itself in my life to like the abstract point where it was kind of absurd, but I believe it's true. I'm going to pierce through a lot of the established BS about looks and flash and identity and who you are. I'm just going to tell you the truth. So yeah, like, I believe that I'm not of this world, because I can't understand it. I never could. In the beginning of my life, it was the small things. I was on a divergent path for things like, let's say sex. Let's start with that. There's always been a lot of emphasis put on the importance of sex, the desirability of it. Sex is used to sell things a lot. And how I bought into that when I was young. Sure, I want sex. Sure, I like sexy girls. Sure. And went about trying to get that. And I did, I've had sex before. But going back to that not being of this world, or being able to understand it, like, my idea of sex and seemingly most other people's ideas of sex are two completely different things. So I learned that because of who I am, the way that I am, that it didn't click. Like, even if I could get the sex and get the relationship and get it going, it wouldn't click. So I did that enough, and I suffered enough for it to where I put it down, right? Like, I set it down. It's like I found something that I thought that I wanted. Okay, I went about working at it, trying to get it right, and I couldn't seem to get what I wanted. So it's not like I've given it up completely, but the level of effort and importance that I'm going to put into it has come way down, and it's kind of like a pipe dream with a lot of folks. I think in a lot of ways, it's a pipe dream. So I've learned to identify that for what it is and not deal with it if I don't believe that it's going to work for me, right? And it was only when I did that I started really feeling better about it. It was like, well, yeah, like, this isn't so bad. Instead of like putting a lot of effort and not getting what I want, I'm not putting in the effort, and I'm not getting what I don't want, right? So there's that. It's like, okay. But saying that, like, how it's been beaten into people's heads that there is this uniform code of sex, to where I have no idea anymore. Like I stopped caring, you know, because I wasn't able to get what I wanted. It's just the way it is. Like, okay, and people weaponizing it, like, oh, if still like full-grown adults, like still trying to like outdo each other or whatever, you know, they're putting a lot of importance on it, and like judging others based on who they have sex with, or if they have sex, or what their identity is. All that is really a turnoff, you know. I mean, there's a saying when I was looking into Hinduism that like the further you get down the spiritual path, the more the idea of sex will make you want to like spit. You know, it's like it's not something that will intrigue you or excite you so much the further along that road you get. And that's true. So there's that. There's the whole thing where nobody's being honest about it. It's kind of been ruined, I think, for the most part. The whole sex thing. Okay, so that's one thing. So called out of the world, not of the world. Don't care about it. Well, see, it's the free flow of ideas. So that's one thing that I wanted to bring up about how that's totally true. Like, you know, I'm not really interested in this whole kind of like sex thing anymore, because it's just poisonous. So there's that, and how that needs to get out there, like that whole viewpoint, because everybody's kind of taken this childish approach to it, to where there's just all these preordained kind of like ritualistic actions, like doors that you go through, like the decision's already made, and you just, you know, go at it. Like sex, like yes, you're gonna want it, and always pro that, like, okay. And how I never figured out, like, oh, I guess to finish my point, to not take up too much time. So yeah, I did go at like things like sex, or like success, or popularity, or like a worldly things. Going after those things for my whole life since I was a youngster. Probably not getting it, and if I do get it, it's not really what I wanted. It's not what was promised. So going through that and suffering a lot. But the whole time, you know, on the divergent path, getting to the point where I'm so far away that it's not really affecting me anymore. You know, like I'm so far on the other end of the spectrum that emotionally, you know, the time that went by, about how it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. And I'm kind of wondering where all that went. I mean, on one hand, people have this idea, or the world has this idea that like it's always good, like money will solve problems, like sex is always good. But I see that it's not working for a lot of people. A lot of people are unhappy, stuck in a relationship, you know, had some kind of consequence, or, you know, it's not working for them, though. The whole system there. A lot of divorce, you know, there's a lot of like, it seems to lead to a lot of unhappiness. But there's a reluctance for anyone to admit it. It's like drugs, too. Like drugs kind of ties into it, because drugs for the past few decades have been pushed more and more. And about how the spectrum really did shift to where a lot of people, more types of people, it happens more often where people are doing drugs, right? But that never makes people happy. So, me, being kind of isolated and, you know, not of the world, and not really understanding why people do what they do or go after what they do, or why someone would kind of like even go against their own best interest for, so the drugs, like you don't get, like you're not popular, you don't get the sex, like you're probably not rich, I'm not rich, right? Like, you get a little bit of all of it, but never, it's never something that really is like, wow, that's gonna be my salvation. Um, so, well, what's good? Okay, well then drugs come along. It's like, oh, okay. Um, so for my 20s, I did drugs, and I realized the whole time that this isn't the answer, right? This is not, this is the exact opposite of the answer. And being surrounded, but there was like the world of people who were into drugs. If you don't have like a bedrock kind of, if you're not called out of the world by God, really, and you get into that, it's over. Because people really have a hard time getting out of it. Like another point, like people getting out of this routine and this established kind of like protocol for sex is like, it's the same kind of thing with drugs. Like if you don't get the sex, a lot of people do drugs. They'll replace it, okay? Well, I quit doing drugs. It got to the point where I had addiction problems, right? But just like with the sex, like it got to the point where like I was so far removed from ever like having any true enjoyment of it, that it didn't bother me. Like I didn't want the sex anymore. The same thing happened with the drugs. Eventually, like wanting it was gone, but also the looking at the consequences of like the behavior, working against yourself. So I quit doing that, and I've quit a lot of things. Like I've stopped doing a lot of things like that, like friends and Facebook. Like I never liked or enjoyed Facebook. I don't have friends. I have like neighbors and acquaintances and stuff, and I get along with people. But the whole idea of friends kind of got ruined too, I think, because that's poisonous. It's just kind of nuts how to try to finish my thought about how people got indoctrinated into the ways of the world. A lot of people did. The majority of people do get indoctrinated into the ways of the world. And they end up, like in the beginning of life, I was confused as to why I couldn't get what I wanted out of that system, out of the world, right? And people who got into that worldly life and lived it and were indoctrinated by it, end up later on in life being like I was when I was young. They're looking at it and they're saying, but it seems like the consequences are much worse for people who tried to stick with it. Because just like I would walk into like a social situation or a relationship and not have any idea of why anything was going to happen, right? Like I would come at it with like a good approach, but something would go wrong. It's like now if with people I kind of see that they're indoctrinated, but it involves consequences that can even be deadly. And I just want to get this out there because I think it's more important than people are really letting on. Yeah, I want to say something, but I'm not going to say it because that might bring up some problems. But yeah, long story short, like now, me, who has been ridiculed and made fun of and not didn't really ended up not liking any of these worldly things. I am in a position of strength now. Suffered a lot. I carried that cross the whole way through my life. And now I'm strong. Like, the ideas of a lot of these worldly things do make me want to spit. And they really don't, they don't get their tentacles into me. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But we'll have to see. One thing I know for sure It's that people who are of the world and the world itself is destined for death and failure and misery. Any kind of like worldly solution, things like that. I mean, you need to work with the natural world, you need to, but trying to extract meaning and all that from it isn't going to work. So I kind of like I know that I feel that I know that I'm right about this. You know, that if you wanted to place a bet, I don't gamble, but if you wanted to place a bet on what will work better over a time spectrum for people as far as their longevity, their happiness, you know, their enlightenment, all these things, you know, mark my words, you're going to want to go with heavenly things instead of worldly things. Now, I can say that now, and I feel like the people who might hate God or really be hardcore into like control in the world, they've had the microphone for so long that they've been able to ramrod worldly ways onto me and onto everyone. But I think now with how big things have got, how big some of these problems have become, they've bitten off more they can chew, and we've crossed the threshold of like me feeling bad about it, about, you know, me or somebody like me who's called out of the world and not of it feeling. So we've crossed the threshold of me suffering, and we've entered the era into the time of the worldly people having to suffer because what they have doesn't work. You know, it doesn't work. Like, psych pills don't make you not depressed. You know, sex isn't all that. You know what I mean? Money doesn't mean morals. Money doesn't make the person, okay? I could go on and on. But it's Honesty Hour on Talking Heads. And I'm so glad that I stuck with it, that I stuck with God and stuck with faith, because now when I'm presented with the tragedies of the worldly, I'm not impressed. I see people who have ridden high for a long time crying or sad or upset, like I've never seen them before almost, you know. And I wonder what happened, but on the other end, like, isn't this appropriate? You know, the compassion is there if I feel like they deserve it, but a lot of times I won't because I really don't believe they do. Because there was very little for me, you know. So let's say, you know, some rich guy goes bankrupt, or a politician can't get elected, or somebody can't do their political action money, or whatever it is, or, you know, whatever it is. Or like drugs, or somebody messed up again, or a breakup, or a divorce, or any kind of story. It just makes me wonder, you know, where were you this whole time in life? I mean, presenting a picture of yourself and the world as one and harmonious and happy, but that's not the way it really is. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't gamble, but mark my words, I've seen it in my own lifetime, and now it's kind of an absurdity, the abstraction. So we'll see where it all ends. but I couldn't be happier. And you also should not be able to get any happier, because you should do the same thing. You should be like me, instead of being like some guy on TV, or in a movie, or a magazine, or Facebook, or the guy with the mad money, because they're all jokes. There you go. Cultural enrichment. Okay, so I was going to stop, but I'm going to keep going, because there's always more. Okay, so, well, I talked about, okay, being a little kid growing up, not being in the world. Seemingly, the majority of people going about believing what they see, you know, and in the world, and going after it, and hoping for it as a salvation and that kind of thing, and how it usually doesn't work out for them. A lot of pointing the finger and ridiculing people like me, only to end up kind of sorrowful when their plans don't work. Okay, now, that last part there about ridiculing me, okay, that's not a joke, like I'm not making that up. It might sound like complaining, but again, it's just the truth. You can complain about me telling the truth if you want, but a need to ridicule me and put my way of life down and shit on me, forgive me, Lord, but that approach to me, isolate it, you know, make fun of me, not give me good stuff, tell me you're going to give me something good and then turn around and give me the exact opposite. Okay, how that was fun for so long for a lot of people. But, you know, like the parable of the guy who built his house on a rock and the guy who built his house on a sand there, you have to have something to offer. Like, it's okay if you want to laugh and make jokes or live the way that you want to live, but at the end of the day, you have to have something to offer. You know, it's like I see it. I'm not an old man. Like, I'm not Chuck Schumer's age. I'm not Nancy Pelosi's age. It's not just to pick on them because they're in the news and they're really not offering anything good. Like those kind of folks. The worldly, you know, have laughed for the longest and gotten away with everything and ridiculed people that they didn't like. And now, though, now is the time when somebody like a Chuck Schumer or a Nancy Pelosi needs to have something real to offer that isn't smoke and mirrors and a dumb game, that isn't just a fake ass, fake tits and a pair of yoga pants. It's not just you know, counterfeit money. It's not abortion. It's not something. You have to have something real to offer, and they don't have it. And how, you know, I saw that types like that really have taken pleasure for the longest in laughing at me, because I didn't have what they have. I wasn't part of their world, right? And I don't feel the same way about them now when I see that they brought about even their own failure. I don't find that funny. I find that deserving of punishment and justice. Like, they deserve justice now. And that's the thing that I like about the Bible. And because it is true, because they're going to get ultimate justice. People like that. You know, to even extrapolate a little further on the sex thing. Sex is out of control. You have to have something to offer, right? If it's just going to be sex, then at least get that right. Because I kind of look at the sex crowd, the worldly, you know, atheist sex crowd, they're all miserable. They have no idea what they're doing anymore, okay? And again, they've always ridiculed me for not being a part of their world. Well, their world sucks. And I'm not the type of person who's going to take some kind of sick enjoyment and laugh about them failing and being miserable and laughing at their misfortune, okay? No, I'm not gonna be happy with them. I'm not gonna have sympathy, essentially. So we're caught in this catch-22. We really are. Where you have a lot of people who are blinded by that kind of thing. And it's becoming abstract to where it's two different worlds. They built their house on sand. And they're kind of paying the price. Because, it is all, the world is all, worldly people, that kind of thing, it is all smoke and mirrors. Like, they still want to try to laugh and act like they're in the position of strength with the, like they won, but they didn't. And, they're lucky that there's a remnant of Christianity, in me at least, and probably in others too, to not want to take it upon themselves to exact God's justice. Like, good thing that there's compassion to the point where you're not going to get, like, done in or like beheaded like a Muslim or shot like a communist. Because that's really where we're at. Like, this is important stuff that I want the world and people to know. Like, everybody needs to know this stuff. Like, I'm not buying what they're selling. I don't think it's going to catch on for them anymore. Like, I'm really believing this. So, it's just ironic that it kind of has come to the point where the degeneracy and everything, like abortion, like transsexualism for kids, whatever it is, like, this kind of stuff has always been important, but the level that it's gone to isn't any good. Like, this globalism thing, like China, I don't want anything from China. I never did. I've been listening to people talk for the longest on TV about how we're, like, connected at the hip with China, and how I kind of feel like the Chinese have fallen headlong into the trap of the world completely, and they're blind and deaf. Okay? You see it, like, they've had this power, like a generation or two, of politicians over here. The worldly people really got really powerful, and I have no idea, other than God, of that ever being checked. It was pretty sinister and ugly. And I don't like, the demand, like, China's saying that America's racist or something, or racist. Like, the whole lefty, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, whoever, lefty politics of calling everybody racist, or whatever, sexist, anything like that. Like, you have no idea how much I do not care. Don't care. That's just a stumbling block thrown in my way. So that people can, China can continue to rip off, and Democrats can continue to abort children, and all that whole dumb lifestyle. word to the wise though, stop pushing all that stuff. Like Satanists, worldly people, you need to stop. Because it's biblical, and your fatal flaw, the one missing link in your armor, is exposed. The Holy Spirit's back, and there isn't anything you can do about it. Turns out you're so weak. It turns out that you're really just a mushy, sack of protoplasm who cries all the time, can't stop doing drugs, all that. So yeah, now I can stop. Now that I feel that humanity and the AI knows that there's no weakness on my end. Like you won't get it. Don't think for a second that I need a traveling salesman from China in a plane to touch down, or whoever, or some kind of flashy advertisement, or a pair of yoga pants that are going to get me with anything. Because you can't. Unless you come to me with bedrock. Because I sniff it a mile away. And I'm not missing out. Really, the whole narrative flipped, and it's not just me anymore. It's normies who are figuring out that, not only are we not missing out, nobody wants that anyways. So we'll see.